and deploy your own security architectures based on the AWS Security Reference Architecture, or SRA. So just, can I get some thumbs up from everybody? You can hear me okay? Awesome. Welcome. My name is Eric Rose. I'm a senior manager here in AWS Global Services Security. My team is responsible for helping customers build their security architectures on AWS according to their desired security posture. I'm joined on stage by my colleagues.
Hi, I'm Damindra Bandara. I'm a senior security consultant. I'm in the Security Reference Architecture team. I'm part of the team who's responsible for managing the design guidance and customer insights.
Hi everyone, Liam Schneider, happy to be here. I'm a senior security consultant, also on the team with Damindra and Eric. I am a part of the team here to help with the SRA code library, so thanks.
All right. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that this is a 300 level talk. We will jump in expecting that you all have some familiarity with the services that we'll cover. If you're looking for a gentler introduction, I'd recommend checking out one of our previous security reference architecture talks. Visualize Your Security from reInvent 2021 that was presented by Neil Rothletter and Andy Wickersham, or Revitalize Your Security with the SRA from reInvent 2022 presented by Sarah Curry and Johnny Ray. All right. So enough about what we won't talk about. Here's what we will be covering. We're going to start with the problem definition. So why we built the AWS SRA, how we recommend you leverage it in your organizations, and how we've evolved it based on your feedback. We'll talk through the SRA journey that you each should be following. What are some major features and decision points that you'll have to consider when building a security architecture that aligns to your organization's target security posture. From there, we'll dive into some advanced use cases. Fans of the SRA may have noticed that we recently made some updates to the Security Reference Architecture prescriptive guidance page. We did that to add in some additional features that reflect the latest state of security services in AWS and also update some best practice guidance. The team is also thrilled about a major release to our code library, including multi-account inspector reference deployment and easy setup feature that we'll be walking you through later today. After this talk, we hope you walk away with an understanding of where to learn more about the SRA, how to begin navigating some of the decision points associated with the SRA guidance, and some tools to get started quickly. Finally, we'll leave you with a few calls to action for those of you interested in helping us shape the future of the SRA. We'll be talking about some ways to get involved. And one more thing, before we jump in, these slides will be available after the conference. Each slide includes references to places where you can learn more about the topics covered, and we've aggregated all those together in a closing slide that has a QR code, one page, no need to take screenshots throughout the presentation. All right. So starting, the SRA is based on our collective experiences with AWS enterprise customers. AWS publishes a wealth of security guidance available through our service documentation, our blog posts, tutorials, summits, conferences, etc. Customers have told us that they want a big picture view of AWS security services. Customers will get the most out of the SRA if they're looking for answers to one of the following three questions. Number one, how should security services be deployed and managed while still following multi-account and overall AWS best practices? For this, we have architecture diagrams that provide recommended patterns for how customers can deploy, configure, and operate AWS security services holistically. Number two, what are some trade-offs that customers should be aware of? Management trade-offs or cost trade-offs. And for those, we've included a design considerations call-out in each section of the document, and we'll be walking through a few examples of those later in the presentation, where we describe some of the assumptions that we made about the specific service configurations and how you might choose to configure them differently. Finally, what are some of the workloads deployed in SRA, and what are some example implementations for SRA controls? For these, we chose in the document to model the SRA around a single page app. And today, we'll be taking you through an example of how you might configure the SRA for an edge deployed application. This is an area where we're continually innovating. Later this week, we expect to launch a detective feature that will allow you to layer in detective capabilities to the SRA. All right, here it is. Brought together in a single diagram and focusing primarily on the security services and features, this is our security reference architecture. It is intended to be comprehensive, and we know that your security architectures might look slightly different than what's displayed on the screen here, and that's perfectly okay. At reInvent 6 months ago, I sat down with a customer who saw the reInvent talk from Sarah and Johnny, and she wanted more details about how she could begin applying the security reference architecture guidance to her organization. She found herself in a situation that a lot of my customers find themselves in, where her company had production workloads running in AWS, leadership wanted to migrate new lines of business to AWS, while at the same time managing a consistent, centralized security set of standards. She led a lean security team and needed a way to bring all of these workloads under some kind of central security management. So she wanted insights in where to trade ease of management for cost or granularity of security control for central standardization. Today, we will talk through a few examples of how you might think through those trade-offs. As we begin, the Cloud Adoption Framework anchors a lot of the guidance that we provide in the SRA. The SRA itself is organized around a primary pattern and additional patterns that have design considerations. Throughout the presentation, we'll show you this approach and discuss some trade-offs that may choose you to take a slightly different configuration approach than what's described in the document. There are multiple ways to strategically think about what security services you need to deploy. We recommend using the Cloud Adoption Framework as an abstraction of our security services to think about the business value that the services provide and which teams will be responsible for managing them. We'll talk through the rest of the presentation. Will be organized around these 9 perspectives of the security CAF. In addition to the CAF, we published guidance laid out in the security pillar of the WellArchitected Framework. The WellArchitected Framework has practical guidance that can help you strengthen your workload security on AWS. Where the CAF helps you frame up the overall security strategy, the WellArchitected principles describe what you can start doing today. They are reflected deliberately in the SRA, and we've woven the structure into what we've built with it. There are 7 design principles, and some of the design principles in the WellArchitected Framework are harder to retrofit into an environment. So where you are able to adequately plan, you can make life easier for yourself and your organization down the road. A great example of that is keep people away from data. The WellArchitected Framework defines this as using mechanisms and tools to reduce or eliminate the need to directly access or manually process data. This reduces the risk of mishandling or modification and human error when handling sensitive data. Establishing a secure foundation allows you to insert security controls and enforcement points aligned to your organization's risk appetite, and the more that can be agreed upon and standardized upfront, the easier it will be to scale. So where do we begin? Setting the foundation. The building blocks of the SRA are the AWS accounts themselves, organizations and their service control policies. Think services like CloudTrail for auditing, KMS or Key Management Service for data protection and encryption, and AWS Config for continuous monitoring. So digging in and identifying what those core services are will help you better understand how your control definitions are implemented in AWS services and what configurations will help you do things like expedite audits, build confidence with your leadership and your customers that you are effectively managing security risk on your side of the AWS shared responsibility model. The security boundaries of the SRA depend on functionally and logically isolating security shared services from the workloads to reduce the potential scope of a single misconfiguration. Understanding where services sit in the SRA will help you maintain the assurances that those boundaries of the SRA provide. Finally, it's important to understand how the services interact with one another to deliver the business value and achieve their security benefits. In the security reference architecture, we will call out where those services may be used in one account but administered in another, and what interactions they have in an operational setup so you can understand the direction and nature of information flowing between services. An example of this might be AWS Config deployed into a workload account that needs to publish findings back to Security Hub deployed in the security tooling account. planning your account structure. This all starts with organizations management, AWS organizations. The management account is key to all of the administrative tasks in AWS. These include account management, policies, integration with other AWS services, consolidated billing, and so on. It's important that you restrict and limit access to the management account to only those administrative users who need rights to make changes to the organization. We recommend that you use the management account and its users and roles for tasks that must only be performed in that account. Store all of your other resources, all of the business applications in other AWS accounts in the organization and keep them out of the management account. One important reason for this is because organizations themselves can't, or the organization management account cannot have control policies applied to them that limit access. At a minimum, we recommend you configure 3 dedicated organizational units for your reference architectures. When designing your OUs and account structure, start with security and infrastructure in mind. We recommend creating a set of foundational OUs for these specific functions, split out more or less as we have on the diagram here. On the left, you'll see the organizational unit, and on the right are some examples of accounts that exist in those organizational units. If you're using Control Tower relies on a foundational OU that is initially named the Security OU. This Security OU contains 2 accounts called the Log Archive and the Audit Account. The SRA guidance describes a security tooling account this can be thought of as sort of a stand-in for the audit account. And if naming parity is important to you, then you can set that when you're configuring your landing zone of Control Tower. Most of our customers have a dedicated cloud infrastructure team that's distinct from security. And keeping that in mind during your OU design will help you set the service control policies appropriate for the service usage and permissions appropriately. Finally, at the bottom, you'll see we have the workloads OU, which is where we house all of the accounts that host business applications and allow agility and of the developers. This is sort of a visual representation of the organizational unit setup that I just walked you through. As you can see, we have the organization management account at the top. Again, we recommend you restrict access to that, keep as few applications running it as practical. Security tooling and log archive will host most of your security-focused applications, whereas infrastructure will host things such as networks and shared services. And then finally, the workload account is where business units will deploy applications and developers will innovate. Up next, Demindra will talk through a deeper dive on identity and access management. You have the mic.
Thanks, Eric. So now I'm going to walk you through how you can use some capabilities in the SCAF security perspective and build your security architecture to follow with security reference architecture best practices. Let's start with identity and access management. There are multiple functionalities or services, sub-services available within AWS IAM. But for this presentation, I'm going to mainly focus on two main services, which is AWS IAM Access Analyzer and AWS IAM Identity Center. IAM Access Analyzer helps validate against policy grammar, validate your IAM policies against policy grammar and best practices. And it also generates IAM policies based on access activity that is in the CloudTrail logs. So in AWS SRA, we use the security tooling account as the delegated administrator for the IAM Access Analyzer. By doing that, we give the permission for the delegated admin access, admin account, the security tooling account, to create IAM policies at the IAM Access Analyzers that are scoped at the organization level. Then we also need to create access analyzers that are account scoped in each of your AWS accounts. So to do that, we recommend have these access analyzers created as part of the account factory. So whenever a new account is created, it will be deployed as part of that initial configurations. Then the findings of these account scoped analyzers will go to the security hub in each individual account, and then it will flow and aggregated to the security tooling account. Now moving to AWS IAM Identity Center, we are using the shared services account. We deployed it in the shared services account. The main reason is that in normal multi-account environment, we use Microsoft Active Directory in the shared services account. So if we use the Microsoft Active Directory as the identity source for our IAM Identity Center, it should reside in the same account. So that is why, to accommodate that use case, we are deploying the AWS IAM Identity Center in the shared services account in AWS SRA. So if you look at the AWS SRA design guidance document, you see we usually talk about a primary pattern in the main body and also talk about alternate patterns as design considerations. So one design considerations that apply here is having a dedicated IAM account for IAM activities. For example, when we work with enterprise customers, we see like they have a dedicated team responsible for all this access management. So in that case, if you have a similar management team, you can have a dedicated account that you will deploy your identity center, then your Microsoft Active Directory and IAM Access Analyzer. So you can have dedicated access or dedicated accounts, so the access to these IAM activities are limited. Now I'm going to talk about two capabilities that go hands in hand, which is detective control and incident response. The detective control is where you detect the events that happen in your AWS environment, and there are multiple services that are available for that. So, however, we recommend few main services: AWS CloudTrail, AWS Config, AWS Security Hub, and Amazon GuardDuty to deploy as part of your basic configurations as your basic guardrails. So, similar to Access Analyzer, we recommend deploying it as part of your account factory. And AWS SRA follow a centralized logging to the log archive account. So the logs from CloudTrail will go to S3 buckets in the log archive account, and all the results from AWS Config, Security Hub, and GuardDuty will aggregate to the security tooling account, because that's what we've set as the delegated admin for all these services. Again, talking about an alternate pattern, you can have more than one security tooling account. So in AWS SRA, we have all the security tools in one account, like all these services listed here: IAM Access Analyzer, Inspector, Detective, so all these things in one single security tooling account. However, if you have a team dedicated for managing detection and remediation, you can have a separated security tooling account for detective and remediation activities. Let's go to the incident response here. So incident response capability usually involves preparation, detection, recovery, and post-incident analysis activities. However, when we are talking about the SRA, we are talking about the architecture. So we are focusing on the preparation part of the incident response here. So all the services we deployed and talked in the detective control still apply here. However, when you talk about incident response, the important part is how you plan the responses for these detected events. So we recommend having automations. We use our AWS Lambda and try to automate as much as remediation. So you have automated remediation enabled for these detected events. And also, as part of preparation, have your incident response playbooks ready. And there are multiple sample playbooks available in AWS documentation, and at the end of the presentation, as Eric mentioned, we'll provide you links to all these documents. So you can use that to build your own playbooks, so you have it ready in case you encounter a security event. In addition to the services that we discussed, Amazon Detective is good to have or provide additional benefits for security investigation and root case analysis during a security event. So we are using Amazon Detective also security tooling account as the delegated admin account. So the findings will go to aggregated in the security tooling account, and detective finding profiles can be accessed directly from Guard Duty and AWS Security Hub consoles. So this is a screenshot from our application account in the Security Reference Architecture. And if you look here, this side, the right-hand side, you see these services in small font divided by this line here. So these are the services that will go to apply as baseline services in all of your AWS accounts. So if you look at the Security Reference Architecture diagram, you'll see these services, this pattern in all these accounts, because we recommend deploying these services as baseline services. So now you set up your access and set up your basic guardrails, security guardrails. Let's talk about what you need to do to build a secure network. When thinking about building a secure network, the main thing is consider defense in depth. So you have multiple layers of security. So in case an unauthorized user try to access your environment, they had to invade, break multiple layers. So it's not easy to get into your services. There are multiple security features available within VPC security. Start with simple things like security groups, network ACLs to build your security guardrails. Simple example, if you have a web server, you don't have to open your ports, all the ports. You only need access to port 80 and 443. So simply you can do that using security groups. Then you can use access VPC endpoints to create secure or private connection to your AWS services in your AWS environment. Okay, so now you build your basic security guardrails. Now you can see what additional things that you can add, like ingress-egress filtering, intrusion detection, intrusion prevention, like other capabilities. There are multiple ways you can do that, but I'm going to talk about the AWS Network Firewall here, because this is an AWS native service that provide all these capabilities like intrusion detection prevention and ingress-egress filtering. In AWS SRA, we are using a centralized deployment for network firewall to work with the transit gateway. So the network firewall will reside in a separate dedicated inspection VPC, and all the traffic will route through this network firewall. Alternatively, you can have network firewall deployed in a decentralized way in each of your your Amazon VPC. And if you do that, just keep in mind, now you have to manage rules at multiple places because you are deployed it in a decentralized way. So it could be difficult to manage. So if you decide to do that, consider using service like AWS Firewall Manager, so you can manage these rules at multiple places from a central location. Now let's move on to talk a little bit about endpoint protection. So if you have EC2 instances, take advantage of AWS Systems Manager to maintain security and compliance by scanning your managed instances and report any policy violations. For Systems Manager, we are using Shared Services account as the delegated admin account, and you can easily onboard your EC2 instances as managed instances to the Systems Manager. One part of that is installing the Systems Manager agent in your EC2 instances. There are multiple, once you do that, there are multiple features available, and I'm not going to talk about everything, just focus on few. First, Systems Manager Explorer. It allows you to visualize. It's a managed dashboard, operational dashboard, provides the information about the EC2 instances, the managed EC2 instances. So we are using the shared services as the delegated admin account. So the Systems Manager Explorer findings will be aggregated in the shared services account. And another feature, quick setup. You can use that to automate periodic patch scans and inventory collections. So for example, you can set up some daily scans of your EC2 instances to identify any missing patches, and then you can decide how you can patch these instances. Now moving to the vulnerability management, talk about the Amazon Inspector, which is our managed vulnerability management solution for EC2, ECR, and for Lambda functions. So we are using the security tooling as the delegated admin, so the findings will be available aggregated in Security Hub in the security tooling account. Now, let's move on to data protection. Data protection has multiple components. Encryption at rest, transit, encryption in transit, then like things like data loss prevention. So starting with the encryption at rest, AWS Key Management solution provides the keys that we need to encrypt your data resides in like S3, EBS, and your databases. So in SRA, we are using a decentralized deployment for KMS because our recommendation is to deploy the keys closer to the application or the service that you want to encrypt. So for example, if you want to encrypt your logs, CloudTrail logs, consider you have to have your KMS keys inside the log archive accounts because that's where the S3 bucket that keeps the CloudTrail resides. However, although management of the keys, we hand it over to each team or each account, we still encourage in SRA to use a centralized governance and monitoring. What it says is have your security team monitor critical KMS activities, like when a KMS key is deleted or when we see high rate of decryption failures, or if imported key material in KMS key is nearing its expiration date. So you still have this centralized monitoring for your KMS keys. Now let's move on to encryption in transit. Amazon Certificate Manager provides you the capability to generate public TLS certificates as well as private certificates for your services, for your like EC2 instances, ECR, and for your IoT workloads. So let's start first with the public certificates. So public certificates, if we use ACM for public certificates, it should reside in the same account where the service is. So it is deployed in a decentralized way in the same account. For example, if you use it with CloudFront, it has to reside in the same, ACM should be deployed in the same account where the CloudFront distribution is. But for private certificates, we usually recommend a centralized CA hierarchy. The reason is usually your security team manage the private PKI for your private certificates, like creation of the private CA. So we recommend having a centralized hierarchy where your private CA, the root CA for your private certificates resides in the security tooling account. However, it will be distributed to all your accounts using AWS Resource Access Manager or AWS RAM. So it will still provide, although we do management of the private CA at the security tooling account level, still each application account can create their own certificates as self-service. So it is decentralized. One additional service that we discuss here for data loss prevention is Amazon Messi. I would recommend it's a good to have service, and using the it will identify the sensitive data in your S3 buckets. So recommend deploying it in accounts like log archive and application accounts, and using delegated admin, the results will be aggregated to the security tooling account. Okay, so now we looked at how we can use a couple of perspective or capabilities in the CAF security perspective to build a baseline or the minimum security services for your security architecture. Now let's see how we can enhance this using some advanced use cases. For this, I'm using an example which we recently added to our design guidance, which is the edge security. So here I have a EC2 instance, my web server running in the EC2 instance, sitting behind an application load balancer. So see how we can enhance our security architecture to protect this workload. So I'm using CloudFront, AWS WAF, AWS Shield, and AWS Firewall Manager. And let's dive deep and see how we are recommended to deploy this in AWS Security Reference Architecture. CloudFront is our content delivery network. It provides comprehensive infrastructure level DDoS protection, so we recommend using CloudFront to distribute your web content. In SRA, we are using the CloudFront in centralized deployment model, where all your CloudFront distributions will reside in the network account. This is to align with the centralized networking pattern that we were discussing throughout the design guidance. So using the centralized pattern, you have for CloudFront, we have the ability for the network team, if you have a separate network team, to manage the configuration settings and monitor usage for all the CloudFront distribution from this one account. And also it provides the ability to manage the ACM certificates, DNS records, CloudFront logging from one centralized account. However, when we talk to customers, we also see a lot of customers deploy this in a decentralized approach, where the CloudFront distribution is deployed as part of your workload in your application account. So there are multiple benefits from that approach as well. Main benefit is now the CloudFront distributions are distributed across multiple accounts. You don't have to worry about the service limits, because if it's a one account, then you could you have to deal with the service quota limits. So another thing is, if you have it in the same account as your like for S3 origins, you can use you can define the origin access control and origin access identity features. These are some features available to protect your S3 origins. You can directly do that using the console. It's easy. However, if the CloudFront distribution and the S3 buckets are in two different accounts, you have to do that manually. So there are advantages. Now let's move on to the AWS WAF. Our recommendation is to integrate with Amazon CloudFront. AWS WAF is our web application firewall solution. Integrate it with Amazon CloudFront. By doing that, you are protecting your or inspecting your traffic closer to the end user, because now you are processing this at the edge locations. So recommendation is to start with having the WAF rules, WAF integrated with Amazon CloudFront. And as alternate patterns, you can also deploy WAF with the regional resource. And one common pattern that we see with some our customers is to have 2 layers of WAF. We have the most common rules at the CloudFront level, and then have another application-specific rules at your regional resource level. Now moving to Shield. A Shield provides a Shield standard by default provide infrastructure level DDoS protection by default for all the AWS customers. And if you want to get additional application layer DDoS protection, you can subscribe to Shield Advanced. And when configuring Shield Advanced, protect all the entry points to your network. But if you have multiple in your same data flow, like you have a CloudFront in front of application load balancer, only protect the first one. The reason is, like, if you do it twice, you will be paying data trans out fee twice. So always consider only protecting the entry point here. And consider enabling features like automatic application layer DDoS mitigation, proactive engagement, things like that. I'm not going to dive deep into these things due to time constraints. However, just to end, you can use AWS Firewall Manager to manage WAF and Shield rules at scale. So now I'm going to hand over to Liam, and Liam will show how easy you can deploy these things in your environment using SRA code library. Over to you, Liam.
Thank you, Demindra. Boy, that was a lot of information. So I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about how easy it is to get started with our AWS SRA code library. You might find yourself in a situation where you're wanting to configure best practice for security in your environment. You want to do it in alignment with what we've been talking about today for the SRA guidance, but maybe you don't have the expertise, or maybe you don't have the time. I don't know about you all. Sometimes I don't have the time to build it all. Well, we have an easy button for you. By show of hands, how many of you have actually played with or tried to install the SRA code library that we have? Okay, couple. All right. How many are still using it? All right. Great. So you may or may not be aware that we've made a lot of changes recently. Some of these changes were about adding some more solutions. Some were really aimed at trying to make it simpler so that it's easier for you all to get started with it. Today I'm going to show you how easy it is. But before I do, I want to talk about some of the details. The easy setup is what I'm going to demonstrate today, and it starts with a CloudFormation template. The first resource that it creates is a code build project. This does all of the heavy lifting. It also comes with a Lambda that starts that code build project. That Lambda then kicks off another CloudFormation template, which in turn builds an Amazon S3 bucket, a staging bucket. After that, it downloads our code library in entirety and then uploads it to the S3 bucket we just provisioned. Next, we're going to deploy what's called the common solution through a couple templates, and then finally, the other AWS SRA solutions that we want to deploy in the environment happen. So let's talk about that common solution. The common solution is a foundational component of the AWS SRA code library. It only needs to be deployed one time in your environment. That S3 staging bucket that I already talked about, technically it's a part of this common solution. A couple Lambda functions get deployed as a part of this. One is the org ID Lambda function that's used to get, you guessed it, the AWS organization ID. And another one for Lambda parameters, such as the root organization ID, what governed regions we need, what the security tooling account or the audit account ID is, what the log archive account ID is, etc. Then we have the SSM parameter store, where we store all of that information in it so that the other AWS SRA solutions are able to access it and use that information. We also have a customer managed KMS key used for creating the secrets and share this unique information to the management account. And we have CloudWatch log groups for the Lambda functions to store their log information in. And we have IAM roles for the Lambda and CloudFormation to have access to do what it needs to do. Next, let's talk about a couple of the AWS SRA solutions. I won't talk about all of them, but I'll talk about the ones I'll be demonstrating today. This is the CloudTrail solution. This is a solution that you may need if you need to enable data events in your landing zone environment, or maybe your control tower landing zone is not managing CloudTrail at all. This solution can deploy an org CloudTrail for you. It starts with a Lambda function that gets invoked. It does the configuration for an organization CloudTrail. It also has a customer managed KMS key for the organization's CloudTrail logs and S3 server-side encryption. We have an S3 bucket where the CloudTrail logs get stored in the log archive account. And we have a couple secrets, one that stores the KMS key ARN, and another secret that is storing the S3 bucket name. CloudWatch log groups, so that the Lambda function and the CloudTrail can store its information in it. And then IAM roles to run whatever the CloudTrail needs to, what permissions the CloudTrail needs to have in order to store its information into CloudWatch logs, and of course for the Lambda to do what it needs to do. The next solution I'm going to talk about is the config management solution. This enables config in the management account so that we can protect that key management account. It starts with a Lambda function that's used to actually configure AWS config in the recorder. It then aggregates it to the existing AWS config aggregator over in the audit account. A CloudWatch log group is set up for the Lambda function to store its log information in. And then some roles so that the Lambda can do what it needs to do and the config recorder can examine all the resources in the account. The last solution I'm going to talk about today is our Security Hub solution. And yeah, you guessed it. This is about installing Security Hub in your organization. It also starts with a Lambda function that is used to configure Security Hub in the other accounts. We have an event rule that kicks off when a new account is provisioned in the environment, which will launch the Lambda function itself. We also have an SNS topic that's used, again, to launch the Lambda for fan-out configuration. We have a dead letter queue and an alarm topic to handle and capture failed Lambda events. And then a CloudWatch log group that is used for the Lambda function to store its log information in. Lastly, we have the IAM roles for the Lambdas to run and assume into for configurations of Security Hub in the organization accounts. All right, it's a lot of information there. Now let's actually go into a demo so you can actually see this in action. All right. First thing we have here is we have a freshly installed control tower landing zone. We have 3 accounts. If we go look in the landing zone settings, we'll see that we have 4 governed regions. Looking a bit further, we have US East 1, US East 2, US West 2, and on the second page we'll see that we've got US West 1 as well. Now, when we want to actually do the install, the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go to our GitHub repository. I have a link that's going to come up on the top here. We'll also share this with you at the end of the presentation. Go there, scroll down, find the AWS SRA Easy Setup. There'll be a link that goes to the Easy Setup page. In the table of contents, there's a link that'll bring you to download the Easy Setup CloudFormation template. Click on that. We have a command you can copy to download this template. Then we'll go over to our command prompt. You could also do this in Cloud Shell. Paste this in. Hit enter, and voila, we have our SRA Easy Setup YAML file. Now we'll go into our management account. We'll navigate over to the CloudFormation Service Console. And the first thing that we need to do is we need to go into our stack sets area and make sure that we've activated trusted access so that CloudFormation stack sets can deploy what they need to deploy in the environment. Once we click on that button in the upper right corner, we will see a confirmation at the top of the screen that that has been successfully enabled. And now we can go into our stacks area by clicking on the stacks link on the left. And now we can deploy our template. So we're going to click on the Create Stack button in the upper right. With new resources, we're going to choose Upload a New Template. We're going to click the Choose File button, and we're going to navigate to that SRA Easy Setup YAML file we just downloaded. Then we're going to click on the orange Next button. We'll give it a stack name. SRA Easy Setup is a fine name. We'll scroll down from here and we'll select what solutions we want to deploy during setup. It will deploy that common solution. In order to deploy other solutions, we find that deploy parameter and we set it from no to yes. During today's demo, we'll set CloudTrail and the config deploy parameters to yes. So those are the ones that we'll deploy on launch. As we're scrolling down in this template, we'll notice that there's several sections, one for each of the solutions. You can change these parameters to customize those particular solutions to your needs. For today's demo, we're going to leave all of that to its default recommended parameters. Then we scroll down to the bottom, and we will click on the 2 acknowledgements, one for IAM. We'll be deploying IAM resources, and the other one for the auto-expand capability. We're going to review our stack parameters just before we get to that component. This is the same thing you would go through for deploying any CloudFormation stack. Once we've acknowledged that, we click on the orange Submit button, and now we've launched the SRA Easy Setup, and technically we just sit back and relax because that's the last thing you really need to do. Further examination of this, as we're kind of going through this, we'll watch and we'll see various different resources get deployed. We're going to see the code build project Lambda role is starting to be deployed there. If we go back to our other diagrams, we have the code build project that's deployed, or being deployed. Now we see the Lambda custom resource is being deployed. That's that Lambda function. So if we go back to that diagram one more time, that Lambda function is now kicking off the code build project to do all that work. We see that the staging bucket is being deployed. So going back to the common solution diagram, that's the staging bucket we're talking about. Back in the easy setup diagram, that other CloudFormation template and S3 bucket resource has been deployed. Now the code is staged. So we've downloaded things from GitHub and we've uploaded them to the S3 bucket. Now we see the common prerequisite management account parameter stack is being deployed. This is a part of that common solution, the other stacks. So if we just examine the stacks and events, we can see all this stuff is happening. So back in our diagram I showed you earlier, we're talking about these other two CloudFormation templates are being deployed. Further examination of these stacks will reveal that things are starting to complete. Still waiting on that common solution to be finished. And here we see the create complete message pop up. The common solution is done. So back to our diagram, all of these resources that we talked about earlier are now deployed. So now CloudTrail and the config management solutions are being deployed. We'll see those stacks kick off. And we'll start seeing some of those complete. So we see the config management solution stacks completed. So that solution is now installed. Going back to our diagram, here are all of the solutions that we've now deployed to the management and audit account. Going back into our CloudFormation console, we'll now see that the CloudTrail solution install is completed as well. So going back to our diagram, these are all the resources we deployed to management, the management account, the audit account, and the log archive account. All right, so now we look at the remaining stacks here. We start seeing everything is completed. So we'll examine our stacks, our events, make sure we're not missing anything. Things are looking good. SRA Easy Setup is showing create complete. If we want to look at all of our stacks, we can go into our stacks area and we can see everything in a holistic one view, and we can verify our SRA Easy Setup is complete. At this point, we're done. That's it. That's how easy it is. Now, say you want to actually update some more solutions. You want to go back and install something else, maybe Security Hub. What we do is we go back into our management account. We go to the CloudFormation Service Console again, and we are going to select the Easy Setup stack that we deployed before. Once we click on it, there's an update button in the upper right corner, and we'll click on that in order to update the stack. We will use the current template. We'll click Next. We'll get that familiar screen of all of the parameters. We'll scroll down. We'll select the appropriate deploy parameter, change it from no to yes. So for this demo, we're going to do Security Hub. So we'll set that to yes. If we wanted to customize the solution further, we just scroll down and select what we needed to select to change that parameter. We're just going to leave it at default. Scroll all the way down, click the orange Next button, next screen, scroll down again, click the Next button, review our parameters, and we'll do our acknowledgement of potentially using IAM resources and the auto expand capability. and then click the red orange submit button. And we're now updating. Again, nothing else we need to do here. Just sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Shortly after, we will see the Security Hub solution stack start to get deployed. So we see the Security Hub solution stack is now being deployed. Going back to our events area, just to zoom in a little bit, you can see that. Now we see the Security Hub configuration IAM role stack is being deployed. So if we look at our Security Hub diagram we talked about before, these are the configuration roles we're talking about that are getting deployed in the environment. The actual Security Hub solution is now being deployed now that those IAM roles are in there. We go back to our diagram. This is that Lambda function, the event rule, the SNS topic, all that stuff, and it's configuring Security Hub and the rest of the org accounts. So now our stack is complete. All of that's been installed. The SRA Easy setup is cleaning up. We can see these statuses start to go green in the events area. See the same thing on the stacks area. Sometimes the interface is a little laggy, as you can see there. So all you have to do is scroll up and click on the refresh button, and all those go green. We are done. Security Hub is installed. Now if we want to just go confirm that it's installed, we can go into one of our member accounts, which the Log Archive is a member account, go into the Security Hub console. We'll immediately see that Security Hub is in fact enabled. And we will start to see findings. So we got some findings here that we need to take a look at for this particular account. Now if we want to see our delegated admin configuration, we go into our security tooling account, aka our audit account. We can go into the Security Hub console. We see that Security Hub is indeed enabled. And if we want to actually check further on what it's seeing its members are, we click on settings and we'll see the two accounts, the management account and the Log Archive account. So this concludes the demo. I am going to go ahead and hand it back over to Eric to close this out and finish this up. Thank you.
Right. Appreciate it, Liam. All right. So today we walked you through how to get the most out of the SRA. It involves starting with the foundations, understanding core services, where they're deployed, and how they interact. We walked through a few of the design considerations that you might make when customizing the security reference architecture to your organization. You can further enhance your security posture by identifying and deploying additional services based on your unique usage of AWS. We're proud of the code library and the work that's gone into it, and hopefully you saw how easy it can be to deploy it in your AWS infrastructure. All right, if you do one thing after this talk, we ask that you take a moment and install our security reference architecture using the Easy Setups tool that we showed you today. As you saw, it's quite straightforward to do. If you do two things after this talk, we hope that one of those is to fill out our surveys to tell us what you need in the SRA and how it can better be customized to your organization. Customer input drives all product roadmaps at AWS, and the SRA is no different. So when customers told us that they needed a holistic view of security services, we built the SRA. Customers told us they needed examples, so we launched the code library. Customers told us they wanted to better understand the design assumptions and trade-offs that went into the SRA configuration, so we enhanced our design guidance and developed this talk. We have a number of initiatives that we have in the SRA backlog, but we need your input to help us prioritize it. If you have needs or use cases that you think the SRA can help with, find one of us after the talk, tell us about it. We'd be excited to hear more. Finally, we are launching a security reference architecture user group where those of you who want to engage with us in focus groups, SRA meetups, or an online community of security professionals can sign up to be notified via the email address that's behind this QR code. Thank you all for your time and attention today. We are obsessed with securing the world's workloads and are thrilled to have you all along for the ride. Thank you.